Macroeconomics. As you all know, economics is a study of choices when there are limited resources, also known as scarcity. There are two large areas within the economics science that study microeconomics and macroeconomics. Macroeconomics is a study of the economy as a whole. We look and describe how the economies grow and change over time. Examples of the variables that are studied in macroeconomics include aggregate output, which is usually measured by GDP, gross domestic product, unemployment, which is measured by unemployment rates in the economy, and inflation, which is usually measured through consumer price index or producer price index. If we look at the world economy, that will be one of the subjects of study in macroeconomics. GDP per capita, or gross domestic product per capita in the world, has risen over the last couple of years from 2010 to 2012, and now is roughly around $12,200 per year per person. The way it is calculated, we'll look at the world's output, all the goods and services produced in the world throughout the year, and divided by the world's population. As you all know, the world's population have grown, so GDP per capita also grown, meaning that world economy is expanding. World GDP growth, world gross domestic product growth actually slowed a little bit over time. In 2010, it was close to 6%, where in 2012, we're somewhere around 4%. Those are estimates, and they are notoriously hard to do because essentially you have to collect the information from every country in the world and simultaneously adjust for all the changes that happen in the population and with the timing. If you look at the world economy as a whole, roughly 60% of it are services. So if we measure consumption around the world, around 60% of it are represented by services. Another 30% are the industry, and the smaller chunk, less than 10%, is actually agriculture. So the world economy has shifted quite a bit from the early 19th to 20th century to now the 21st century. The emphasis was on agriculture, then it shifted to the industry, and then it shifted to services. Another subject for macroeconomics is studying of GDP. In this case, we'll look at the U.S. economy, and the blue line here represents the GDP growth over time in the United States. The shaded area represents the recessions that happen over time. The latest one occurred in 2010, 2008, 2010, and as you see, the GDP were actually down during that time, and now it's continuing growing again. One of the other interesting points in the study of macroeconomics is study of unemployment rate. As you can see on this graph, which represents the last 10 years of U.S. unemployment rate, U.S. enjoyed pretty low unemployment rate for up to 2008, which is the beginning of the economic crisis. And then you see the unemployment rate rising sharply during the economic crisis up to 2010. So the dynamic of the unemployment rate is quite different. During the expansion time, during the times of growth, the unemployment rate is going down slowly. But during the downturn, it jumps up relatively fast. What else can we study in macroeconomics? Interestingly, there's inflation measures that are available for both consumers and producers. For consumers, we have Consumer Price Index, or CPI. This graph represents the changes in Consumer Price Index month to month over the last 10 years. As you see, for the U.S. economy, inflation was relatively low. We actually had a couple of areas of deflation where during the economic crisis, prices actually fell. It is believed that low inflation is actually good for the economy's growth. Again, in macroeconomics, we study the economy as a whole. There's possibility to conduct both the normative and positive analysis. Normative analysis answers the questions what the things ought to be, while positive analysis look just at the things the way they are. Why would we study macroeconomics? Well, we might be interested in the level of interest rates, in level of inflation. If you considering expanding as a manager, you want to know what are the risks and rewards associated with your expansion plan. You have to make sure that your timing is just right.